Freeze.
Free? No, play the music. Hello and welcome to TechNow, the web series for system administrators and developers on the ServiceNow platform. I am really excited to be here today. My name is Chuck Tomasi, and joining me is my wonderful co-host of the past 3 or so years, Craig Stepp. How are you doing today, Craig?
It's been longer than that, but yes, on this venue, yes.
On this venue, yes. We've been friends for many, many years, and we just look forward to this because we don't spend enough time hanging out online.
Yeah, my wife's not jealous at all.
A couple of podcasts, various meetings during the day. We not only work together, we've been playing together for a long, long time.
Yes, we have.
So enough about us. Let's get into our topic and introductions, etc., etc. Let's bring up the Weber thingy. Share. Full screen. Got the notifications off. Present to everyone.
I like the play-by-play.
Yeah, that's the only way I work. Okay. Did I lock the screen? I don't think I locked the screen. Lock the screen. There. Now are we good?
I think so.
I think so. Are you you're keeping an eye on the real live stream, right? Not just my window.
Yeah,
okay,
that's correct. You're good to go.
Excellent. Today we are going to be talking about custom application methodology. It has come to my attention that we need to go back to the basics, so to speak. And somebody said, hey, can you walk through the process of what it takes to build an application on ServiceNow? Because it's obviously significantly different than doing a full stack implementation of an application. There are some advantages to doing it on ServiceNow, or we wouldn't be here talking about it and have a career in this stuff. So let me take you through that. But first, let's do our introductions. For those of you who are new, I'm going to turn my camera off so you're not looking at the side of my head the whole time.
Yeah.
I have to turn my head to get the slides off of the laptop. Where's the magic icon? Camera off. There we go. Now you just get a zoomed in face. And Craig, do we have the avatars on the bottom of the screen on the live stream?
I do not see anything but your slide.
Perfect. I love it when this works that way. All right. So thank you for joining us today. My name is Chuck Tomasi. I am a senior TPMM at ServiceNow. I have lots and lots of IT experience going back decades. That's a scary thought to say now, but makes me feel like I'm ready for retirement.
Right.
I've been doing ServiceNow for about 10 years as a customer, as an implementation specialist, as lots of other roles. And I was fortunate to win the first Innovation of the Year award at Knowledge 10. And to put this in perspective, Knowledge 10, we had about 500 attendees. What are we aiming for at Knowledge 18, Craig? Just 18 years later?
Yeah, just shy of 20. It's like 18,000 or so.
That's insane. That's great.
It's insane, all right. Hey, at least they're not all coming to my house.
And I still see the same people. The same people who I met at Knowledge 10 are still there. It's great. Yeah. It's a family. It really is a wonderful place to be. We'll talk more about it in just a second. Been doing this show for now 5 years. We're in our 6th year of TechNow. Very happy to keep doing this and that it is supported by my employers and everybody around. It's a wonderful thing. Thank you very much. You'll occasionally catch me on Live Coding Happy Hour. Don't have one this week, but I believe we do have one in the dock for the 30th. So keep tabs on that on the Developer Network. And you can always find me on the community, including a new recent startup video series we're doing, Community Live Stream, where I get on there and it is totally unscripted. It is whatever the community presents and crazy rabbit holes we go down.
You should have called it the Community Unchained.
Unscripted.
Unscripted. Unplugged.
Tell the viewer a little bit about yourself, Craig.
Well, I am a senior curricular developer here at ServiceNow, and I've been in the IT business since the late 80s. I specialize in cloud automation, and I've done a lot of orchestration and a lot of programming on ServiceNow, as well as I've been a web developer in a past life. And actually, I'm just shy, about a week or so, from being here for 4 years.
Fully vested.
Fully vested. Oh, I'm invested. How about that? So I've been the co-host with Chuck for about almost 4 years to present. And my hobbies include podcasting, photography, Linux, and my dog Juno right there with me.
Is Juno still with us?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely.
just
She's
making
only
sure this.
4. She's
Okay.
only 4.
Sometimes people take pictures of their dearly departed and
Oh,
just
I've got
want to remember.
I'm a photographer. I got plenty of photos of past animals, but no, she's with us.
All right. Thank you very much. And as we mentioned, Knowledge 18 is just around the corner, depending on when you're watching this. May 7th through 10th at the Venetian in Las Vegas, Nevada. We're going back to Vegas, baby. And this is a wonderful, wonderful event. If you are not already signed up for this, go over to knowledge.servicenow.com. It is not only hands-on labs, 90% content from our customers. It's not just ServiceNow spewing out stuff, although we have a number of things. There's going to be CreatorCon, which will be targeted to our developers and administrators and enterprise architects. Check that checkbox when you sign up to make sure that you're entitled to go to that. Because if you don't have the checkbox checked, your badge won't let you into that content all around IoT and metric base and REST APIs and all the cool nitty gritty stuff. If you want to do some learning on the platform level, CreatorCon is your content. We are also going to be having the hackathon is back. There's going to be and bring business cards. Bring business cards. This is a wonderful networking opportunity to meet people.
I would venture to say that's probably 10 or 20% of reason you go there, just to talk to other people.
I got lucky when I went to Knowledge 10 and I won that Innovation of the Year award. I had job offers that within hours of being let go from my first job because of contacts I made at Knowledge 10.
The janitorial jobs don't count, Chuck.
I'm not saying you should go to Knowledge to get a new job. That's not what I'm saying. But hey, if the cards fall where they will, you'll be in a lot stronger position if you go to Knowledge and do some networking because, hey, you're talking to other ServiceNow people and odds are they're going to be looking for talent anyway. But great thing, go to knowledge.servicenow.com and sign up.
Hurry up and register. I saw an empty seat over there right beside John Donovan.
Yeah, it's limited to 20,000 of our closest friends.
That's right.
And Craig and I will both be there. Craig is once again going to be doing all the dispensation, the allocation, what do we call it?
Virtual infrastructure.
Of all of the, when you go to a lab and you use that machine for 2 hours, Craig's the man behind the scenes that made it come alive and will tear it down. So he is just a one-legged man going crazy over there.
I do. Hey, by the way, I do have a team, but yes, I'm a big part of it.
Part of that team. And I will be doing the developer theater. Anyway, that slide is gone. Let's move on. We're going to be talking
let's just talk about ourselves, Chuck, all day.
Because that won't ever go anywhere. Come to Knowledge. We'll talk about ourselves all you want. All right. The community quick tip is something that I recognized a while ago. And I'm amazed at these little tips and tricks that we need to share. And this is our venue. This is a short segment in the TechNow series that we started, a year or two ago, about how to just get some more information into your hands. Doesn't take a long time. It's not that sophisticated. I'll go through a quick demo. This is how to maintain multiple choice lists. We often get the requirement. People say, I have a checkbox. How do I make that mandatory? You say, you don't make checkboxes mandatory because they always have a value of true or false. Mandatory means there's nothing there. So the option is change it to a choice list and make it say none, yes and no, or none, on and off, or and then when it's on none, it obviously has no value and it can be mandatory. But you find yourself with a lot of these choice lists around the form that say yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. And somebody says, oh, we need a third choice, maybe. And you got to go modify 15 choice lists or more.
Yes.
This is a way to make one field get its content from another field. I found this very helpful when I was doing an implementation a few years ago, and they needed languages. There was one choice list that had all the languages of German and Portuguese and English and Chinese and French and Spanish. And if they added another language, they only added it to one choice list, and it was reflected to all those other language choice lists. It was a wonderful way to do this. And I will show you right now how we can do that using my personal developer instance, which you can get over at developer.servicenow.com. Let me know when you can see my screen there, Craig.
I can.
Excellent. Good. Well, you should have been watching the screen anyway, because that was what PowerPoint was. And I have built a simple application called TechNow 48 Quick Tip. And I have a table in here, two tables actually, one called course and one called assignments. And in my course record, I have a choice list that says, is this the curriculum equivalent? Yes, no. And I also have a language in here that has some languages. Now, also in the assignments, I have an assignment that says, is it extra credit or something? Yeah, extra credit. And it says foo and bar. Okay. I would like that to be a yes and no. So we could go to configure choices and we could take out foo and bar and put in a yes and no, but then we would just be duplicating. And it's not related to that other choice. Instead, what I will do is go to configure dictionary. This is very, very easy. There's no coding or anything involved in this. That's the part I like. Go to advanced view because it will show us a couple extra fields that aren't normally on a easy to configure choice list dictionary entry. And in here we get dependent field. Okay. And I can use dependent field. Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. It's on choice list specification. Choice table. And I want to pick from the course table. Sorry for misleading you. Dependent field is something else. If you want categories and subcategories, that's a dependent field.
Right.
Okay. And it says, oh, what choice list do I have on this course table? Well, I've got two, curriculum equivalent and language. I don't want the language one yet. So I say, you, Mr. Extra Credit Field, are going to get your choices from the course table curriculum equivalent. And what's cool about this is now I have a yes and a no. And if I were to add a maybe onto the course choice list, it will be reflected here.
Yeah,
I
we
can do
just
the
show
same
up.
thing for
That's right.
language. Now, that being said, that's as easy as it gets. And you can just
Yeah.
keep tying these things together. But what I also discovered were some best practices. First of all, you saw me do this. I'm just going to walk through this. I went to configure dictionary, clicked advanced view, and set the choice table and field in the specification. One thing I did note is if you're going to do this, make it easy to maintain. Don't just pick any old random yes, no choice list to do this on or language choice list. In my case, when I did this a few years ago, we had a parent request table that was extended from task. And then we extended that table because it had about 15 common fields for every type of request, whether it's a course or curriculum, facility, instructor, whatever it was. And we had the language field on request. Now we didn't even need to duplicate it so much. It was just inherited. But if there were other tables that were not part of this hierarchy, we could borrow the values, the choice options from that. So make it easy to maintain. Put it in a logical spot. It obviously somebody could go into any choice list and say, "Hey, I found it. Look at the dictionary, and you'll know what table and field it's coming from." The second thing is, even if I were to go back and do that extra credit field and put in the foo and bar, it doesn't matter. I would have thought the local entry would have overridden that choice table and field.
Oh, it just ignores it.
It ignores it. Yep. It has no impact. I could put foo and bar and Megatron and whatever else I want to put in that choice list, and it won't ever show up.
Well, I guess the only thing that's probably important to note is do this before there's any data been put into your table, because otherwise those values will be worthless.
Well, as long as the values are the same. I mean, even if
if you had foo and bar and then you change it to a yes, no, maybe, then you got a problem.
You are correct. All right. I wish we had a chat room going. That would be
We
fun.
do. But nobody's really said anything except for Service Portal Learn. I'm not sure who that is.
Okay.
Says you can go and show the choice list and change the values, which I think you kind of showed that, but
if you're watching this afterwards, don't forget you can put comments in the community discussion as well.
Hey, and you know what? As we were going live,
yes,
I saw where there was a note that it says, "Remember that the chat will stay with the video now." I think it wasn't doing that before.
Oh, well, I have good news and bad news. That's wonderful news. The bad news is we're not going to be doing this on Hangouts in the future. April, we're going to be going to a new format. So keep your eyes peeled for news on that. We will.
Well, thanks, Google, for fixing it now.
Yeah. It's like the champagne comes out just as you're leaving the party.
Pop, hey, where you going? Yeah.
All right. Custom application methodology. My question for you, and we will pose an answer to this at the end. What is the difference between configuring an existing application, incident, problem, change, software asset management, HR, that kind of thing that we provide for you, and starting a new application from scratch? It sounds like this is a whole different world, but In reality, it's not. As we go through this, some of you more experienced administrators and developers will go, well, I already do that. I already do that. These are all part of the ServiceNow platform, and we build our applications on the same platform. It's not like one is written in COBOL and one is written in Java. They're all part of the ServiceNow platform, and that's what gives us a unique power to share that same platform. And you can stand up and extend to other lines of businesses and other custom applications. So the process, this is my money slide here. I'm going to build this out. The whole application building process begins with a process review. Obviously, if you've got no process, then there's nothing to review. You can make it up as you go. But normally you would sit down and say, how do we want this thing to work? Who gets handed off? Where are the tasks going? Are there going to be approvals? What persona? And you start to, some people can do this in Visio. The reason this bar is in black is because we don't have a native platform capability to do process, to facilitate process reviews. What we do have, and I just found this out about a week ago, is an application in the store called Designer. Kind of a generic name, but if you look for that, that is a ServiceNow application built by one of our technology program partner ISVs. I don't even remember what the right name is. Pardon me. I'm having a mental lapse. But it's available on the store. And if you want, you can go to your dev instance or personal developer instance and look at a free trial. Try it out that way. So do your process review. My old legacy self used to use Visio a lot and put in the swim lanes and decision points and flowchart this thing all out and have sub flows. And it's as simple or as complex as you want. It really depends. Sometimes it's just user opens request, fulfiller manages the request, notification sent at the end saying thank you. Three boxes. Yeah. From that process review, you are going to discover what your requirements are. And we do have some capabilities, which I'll get to in just a second, that fit into this bar. What are the objectives? What do we need to get done? How are we going to do it? Who are the personas? Do we have a filler? Do we have a requester? Is this coming in via a machine doing a REST API? What are the players in this thing, and what access do they need? We have end users. End users don't need the ability to change the assignment group. Look at things like that, and that's really where you're going to get your list of what do we need to build. That feeds into it's time to develop. We can actually get started. Now, how long you spend on these depends on the process. If I'm doing an order to cash process, that's going to be a bit more complex than, hey, I've got a safety issue. There's different levels of complexity in here. And I put testing over on the side because it spans all levels. As you develop, Craig, you can attest to this. Developers are doing testing.
Yes.
I put a new field on the form. I want to look, is it where I need it to be? That's a form of testing.
Absolutely.
Does it take a value and save a value? That's a form of testing. I write a UI policy to hide a field when this checkbox is checked. That's a form of testing.
Does it have the right values? Yeah.
Right. You're going to be testing all the way through this. And I've got this little asterisk in here periodically to say, you may require developer support. Now, I'm targeting two different personas in the platform world. There are the no coder, low coder kind, where I want maybe James in purchasing to help me work on this application.
Yeah, you don't want him coding anything.
And part of their requirement is they need a front end portal. Well, James can do drag and drop widgets on Service Portal, but he needs some custom widgets. That's where he comes back to IT. Those are the developers. So if you see the star, it means things could get harder here, but not necessarily. James is doing form layout. He's testing. There's nothing that says testing does require. So then we get into the data model, and this is sort of a three-legged stool here. The data model is your tables, your relationships, the fields that are on there. These all come out of your requirements. And requirements are going to span this entire development. I really kind of should have put requirements down the other side, outside of this gray box, because everything you do should feed into those requirements. What reports do I need? What fields do I need on the form? What approvals are? It's all part of requirements that should feed back to that. And with the data model, this is originally I had this linearly, thinking, how does Chuck Tomasi build an application? And when it's just me solving my personal application requirement and building a solution for me, I usually just jump in and start making tables because I mentally know what the requirements are. But in an enterprise, obviously, you can't just be that cowboy. Uh, Once I make the data model, then I go to the forms because I can't stand trying to build anything else with ugly forms. Check boxes below a full width field. Below, no, let's not do that. So I often go and tidy up the lists and forms on the initial round to make it usable. And if you are, say, sitting down with a line of business person in a conference room, you could prototype both of these very, very quickly. Hey, let's make some fields, drag them onto the form with the form designer. I'm getting ahead of myself, but then we get into the third leg of that three-legged stool, and that's the business logic. And I would venture to say this is where most of the work is going to be done on your application because it applies to these 6 boxes and then some. I just put these in as examples of common things you do when you're building an application. You've got notifications. Do you want to let somebody know, hey, your request has been received, or something is overflowing the tank? You might want to go look at it. Are there approvals, integrations? Are we going to be exchanging information both incoming and outgoing to other applications, other systems, on board and off board of ServiceNow? Are there tasks that we want to delegate and subdivide so that people can run in parallel or serially? Let's definitely look at security. We've got different personas involved. Not everybody gets the same level of access, even to the application itself. We may need to do application administration, thinking a la the human resources application that ServiceNow gives you. I can log in as an admin and I don't have access to that application or data. It's sort of like the elevated ACL thing where you turn on security admin. Well, you got to be an admin of that application. So I may need to have a persona that has, if it's a government super secret application and data, I can still build that and know that my admins don't have that. Anyway, I'm going down a rabbit trail a little too early. And then, of course, automation. How do we use Flow Designer or business rules or scheduled jobs or workflows or many of those other capabilities to do this automation? And really, the reason you put something like this on ServiceNow is to help automate those processes. Spreadsheets only got us so far as a system of record. Now we can have a system of record and a system of automation and have it take action and get all the analytics, et cetera, et cetera. So that's where we're going. And then, of course, that feeds right into reporting and analytics.
Yep.
These are often implemented later in the process, but not necessarily last, and certainly not considered last. Much like security, it all flows from those requirements. Many times when I'm talking to somebody about requirements, they say, hey, I need to build an application. I say, great. What do you envision? What is the outcome? What is the goal? What are your objectives? What do you want to get out of this? Are we improving a process, making it more efficient? Are we measuring how we're doing against something else? What is the goal that we're trying to do? And that, even though reporting and analytics are on the bottom, they don't necessarily, they shouldn't be considered last by any means.
Oh, no, they should be part of the process as well.
Yes. Leave documentation for last. I'm kidding.
No, just ignore it like everybody else.
Yeah, don't do documentation.
Top security.
So that's my map, and that's where I'm going to take you on this journey. That's really all it takes. Do you see anywhere in here where it says stand up a server, load Apache, procure hardware? You don't have to worry about that, and that is one of the accelerating features of ServiceNow. I hate to sound markety in all this, and this is one of the few presentations we've done or ever will do that doesn't have some sort of demo in it. If I had an afternoon to do this, I would show you, let's build a data model and let's go through the UI. But we only have another half hour or so. So I want to make sure you get the right information. This is one of the more heady, conceptual, abstract topics we've done. But for somebody who's new to the platform, keep this picture in mind. And we will make slides available like we always do in PDF form on the community at community.servicenow.com. If you search for TechNow episode list, you will find this as episode 48, and those will be available to you within hours of this broadcast. Now, you've seen this comic before or version of it. I know I saw one that had about 20 frames on it.
My favorite two are the OSHA one and the one where the tree's cut in half as the field crew installed it.
There was one that says how it was documented and the tree wasn't even there.
Yeah. Right.
Getting back to our joke we just had.
Yeah.
So the idea here is communication and working collaboratively is hugely important. It's tremendously important. And one of the features that I did not document in that map or in the feature list that I'm about to get to, and I'm going to use the term feature and capability interchangeably. So if you hear me say one, it just means something that's available to you on the ServiceNow platform. One of them is delegated development. And the more I dig into this, the more value I see out of it. Okay. I was talking with one of my coworkers the other day, and he said, "This is how I envision delegated development." He said, I am trying to put wires in my house, and I can do the low cost, low effort thing of pulling wires. And then I'll call up the electrician at the end and say, "Okay, I'm ready to hook it up. I need your expertise." Well, that's all fine and dandy if you know what to do for wiring, but if you don't know the code of outlets need to be this high from the floor, or you need this many outlets in a room or behind a door. That was a new one I discovered when I wired our house about 15, 18 years ago. And you're using speaker wire instead of Romex, there's a problem there. You
Yeah.
need to work at the beginning, and this is a no code, low code person. Let's say James in procurement is working on this, and he wants to build an application. Well, James doesn't just go off and crank out a Microsoft Access database and say, "Here, now turn it into an enterprise application."
Access
Right? You're going to be that's what you just given him. This is the
right.
wires coming out of the wall are an Access database. That's and and I can't fix that. There's nothing for me to connect up to unless we start working collaboratively. And delegated development is one thing that enables that, so that you get more of this kind of thing where I'm expanding out that little three-legged stool that was on the other diagram to the data model, the UI, UX,
Mhm.
business logic, and saying, all right, here's our developer. They can provide the work on the high complexity, high value, deep thinking topics that require some code, whether it's service portal widgets, integration hub actions, that kind of thing. That's what this person is going to be able to contribute. And then James in procurement can do the draggy droppy stuff, flow designer, drag up actions out there, or form designer, and put fields on a form. But when it comes to, hey, I need this when I click this button, James, I need it to trigger a REST API that goes out to this particular place and bring stuff back. Well, then the developer may need to get involved. So this is a very collaborative thing. Start working early to say, what are my requirements? Can it be done? We'll get into customizations towards the end of this, but can it be done and work together to really achieve some amazing things? I just see delegated development is phenomenally important in this, and it's been around for a couple of releases. I forgot whether it was Helsinki or Jakarta or Istanbul, somewhere in there. We introduced delegated development into Studio, and it's become a real wonderful thing to save time, because now James can do that work about putting forms on fields. He knows the process, so he knows what fields he's going to need. May not always be in compliance with corporate standards you've set up. Hey, the number should always go in the upper left field. Well, James didn't know that, but we can move that real easy.
Yeah.
So IT is still in control of the governance, still in control of the releases, but doesn't have to spend its time. Can you add a checkbox to this form? Yes, you can too, if I give it to you. Which means if you're saving time, you're obviously saving money. You collaborate, do this iteratively. James puts some fields on the form, or James writes a report, or James does a whole bunch of other things. And Mr. Developer, I never gave that persona a name. Terry, we'll call him Terry.
Terry. Okay.
Terry the programmer. He's now Terry the programmer. Terry can still look at it and vet it out, but it's a lot less effort, and he's spending his time doing more value add stuff. And together, you come out with a higher quality total available solution. All right. We call this our periodic table of the features. I'm not going to dwell on it. This is a lot of stuff that's in the platform that's baked in to help you get stuff done. I am going to tear that thing apart and show how it fits in with that little map we had back there. I don't have the three-legged stool thing because it doesn't fit on the side. But and I mentioned that process review wasn't in our portfolio yet. You never know. If you're watching this in year 2025, maybe we got somewhere.
Yeah.
Jump in the TARDIS and let me know how that went. But as far as collecting objectives, requirements, and that kind of thing, you could do that with our SDLC and Scrum. Put in stories. I've got my requirements. Here is how my developers are going to execute on them. You could also track them as tasks under Project Portfolio Suite and manage them that way. So we've got things on board. Now imagine this. The fewer systems you use to build your application, the less confusion there is, the better the communication is, the instant analytics and reporting is how are we doing? You don't have to export information from that system or do swivel seat between applications. It's in one place, which is a wonderful thing. I can say, hey, I finished this story. Boom, you've got your report for how's our burn down chart doing this week.
Mm-hmm.
We're doing great. So whenever possible, look for ways to track and not only build the application, but manage the application on ServiceNow as well. I'm not just saying that like to sound salesy and markety. This is honest to goodness. We've done this over and over and over. When we build applications on High and when we maintain things on our internal system called Surf, this is how we do it. And there's a good reason for that. And by drinking our own champagne, going back to the champagne thing before we leave the party,
Yeah.
by drinking our own champagne, we experience what the customer experiences. It's not that we still want to hear what our customer experiences are and where we can improve, because what we do isn't always the same as what our customers do. So let's get into the data model. This is really the underpinning stuff, where this is the storage location for our information, for our data that run our process. And you can guess from that little diagram on the bottom, the first thing we've got is tables. What tables do I need? And what tables do I have if I need locations? Well, I already got that.
Actually, asking that question is kind of important because you don't want to recreate something that you've already got.
No. Is it the worst thing in the world if you do? No, but then you're maintaining two different data sources. If I accidentally made a scoped application table called location, where's that information coming from? How is it being populated? Is it coming from Active Directory or HR or wherever? Like, hey, you know what? You've already got one. So check things like the user administration application menu for users, departments, locations, cost centers. A lot of that common foundational information is going to be found under there, under user administration. And do I remember every table name in the system? Oh, heck no. I mean, I think baseline systems were over.
You mean you don't? I thought you knew them all.
2,000 tables. Yeah, and only a few years ago it was 1,000 tables, and I was still struggling to keep up.
Oh yeah.
So, but if you're familiar with a number, maybe 20, 25 of those most common ones, you can identify where can we leverage existing information. Again, an accelerator to getting your application online is I don't have to build a same location table on every application I make. It's just there for me. Now you may have different filters for, say, the user table, and say when I pick a user in this list, do I want to show all users, or should I filter down to active users, or the ones where the type field is set to customer? You can control that, but it's still one common data repository, and that makes things go quicker. The other thing that I absolutely, absolutely love about ServiceNow is this feature called table extension. Talk about a time saver. And a reporting and analytic feature is, my example here is we've got a table called configuration item, or CI. You can extend these tables, and programmers will get this from an object extension concept. And I thought this was just brilliant. I think Fred Luddy or David Liu or whoever came up with this ought to have some sort of Nobel Prize for this concept, because
Right.
it saves so much time. I can do a report on all CIs, which includes all the hardware, all the software, all the everything that cascades off of that table that is extended from the CI table. Or I can jump right in a computer and say, show me all the computers. And it leaves off network switches, it leaves off printers, it leaves off all the non stuff. Anywhere in this hierarchy, I can jump in and get this. Now, from a developer standpoint, big time saver. If I am looking through the requirements and I see things like, all right, my process is going to involve assigning this to somebody. We're going to have an approval. We're going to have 5 different stages or phases or states, or whatever word somebody uses for this process. What do you think? What's your first inclination? Should I write my own table or should I extend something?
Extend it.
And what table would you extend, Craig?
For what?
For something you're going to assign, put an approval on. These are keywords that trip my trigger all the time.
For something I want to get an approval on. Task.
Task, absolutely.
Yes.
We're going to have states. Like, why make your own table?
Everything extends task.
Not everything. No, not everything extends task.
No.
Let's not go there. But it comes just by extending tasks. You've got 66, 67 fields that you inherit that you don't have to recreate yourself. And you can do this roll up reporting and say, show me all the tasks that are assigned to me. Okay. You can cut across huge swathes of tables, huge tracts of land.
Right.
to get that information that would ordinarily be a pain in the backside if you had to do this manually with a reporting thing. It says, now check that table and get me all the assigned to values from this field where that's me. Just complete and utter nonsense without table extension. I love that feature. We've also got, of course, reference fields, and reference fields are part of the data model because you're referencing a record from another table. So this is your one-to-many relationship. Okay, show me all the incidents where the caller is Chuck. The caller is a reference field to the user table, and I can get that information. Many-to-many definitions. Very underappreciated, but very, very powerful. I built one of these into the lab that I'm building for CreatorCon, where I've got devices and I've got actions. And I said to myself, self, if I were an administrator and I had 15 of the same devices and they were all the same model, all the same firmware, and they had all the same endpoints, would I really want to build a related list of the same actions on every record? Oh, no. I want to define those actions once and apply them through a many-to-many. Same thing with users and groups. Same thing with users and roles. You define the role once and you say, these 5 users get this role. And it goes into this many-to-many definition. I really wish I had known about this concept when I was writing my own ticketing system 20 years ago. It would have been a whole different story.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about it.
Management of that was nasty. And you've also got what we call defined relationships. And these can be found under system definition relationships. Just don't search for relationships in the documentation. It comes up with all kinds of CMDB relationships that you will keep digging and digging and digging.
Yeah.
We can definitely put a link in the show notes if we need to on the YouTube or the community. But anyway, this allows you to define the relationship. And I've used these a number of times. There is even a TechNow episode, I want to say 14, 12, somewhere in the early days, that first year or so, where we did an episode on this. I can take a related list that has many, many types of records in one table. Rather than making separate tables, I can just create a defined relationship and make the related list filter on that. So you can define and say, take this list, add a query that says type is customer. There's your related list of customers. You can use the same records, but just display what you need to in that related list. So defined relationships are very helpful.
Yeah, it is.
Not used very often. Okay.
No, not enough. There's been a few times I kicked myself.
Let's talk UI and UX. These are often interchangeable, but they're really not. The user experience is the holistic approach of how do you want the user to run through your system or your process. And a good touch point to that is the user interface. Now, of course, we've got the standard user interface that consists of your forms and lists that will appear on the next slide as an example. We've all seen them. We've all used them in demos. We all use them. I almost consider this now a back-end experience. You may expose your users to it, but as Service Portal gains popularity and implementation, that seems to be more of the front end. And I'll talk about Service Portal in just a minute. You can use Form Designer, especially with that delegated development stuff that I talked about earlier, to do the drag and drop. There's a couple of things that don't work so well in Form Designer, and you would use Form Layout, particularly dot walking. Okay.
Yes.
I really wish I could do that. Or what's the other one? Embedded lists. Not available on Form Designer. You can still manage them once they're on the form with Form Designer, but putting them there in the first place requires Form Layout. But for a visual drag and drop experience, create fields, add choice lists. I am 99% of my time right now when I manage forms is done in Form Designer. It's just that easy and that flexible to do that. We also want to look at the lists. Is your list layout? Because when you extend the task table, you're going to get the task list and task form with it. Not always what you want. I rarely ever keep that task type column around when I extend the task table and I get the task list. Like, task type, I'm looking at records that are all the same thing. They're all safety issues. I don't need a task type. They're all safety issues. Get rid of that. Put something else useful in its place. And of course, related lists for putting on the form. When we talk about service portal, note the asterisk. That means there's something coming up. If it doesn't, that's called asterisk exasperation. When you have an asterisk and there's no explanation of what it's for. Sorry, that's a sniglet from Rich Hall from the 1980s.
I was going to say, what? Okay, I gotcha. Yeah.
My brain just went down. Squirrel.
Yeah.
I saw the asterisk and had a flashback to 30 years ago. Okay.
Come back to reality. Okay, come back.
We've got portals, pages, and widgets. These are the Angular JS components that we implemented in Helsinki and continue to develop and add to and enhance as we go forward. We're now, the current release is Kingston as we record this in March of 2018. And they are a wonderfully flexible way to create a beautiful user experience. And it often, like many CMS implementations, you probably want to do a little more planning about how you want to lay out your content and what pages you want, and are these responsive, and how that all interacts. So that's why the asterisk is there, because it may require some development. And oftentimes what I found, not always, oftentimes what I found, let's talk about the native mobile app first. We've got the native mobile application that covers both the standard and the service portal. So it's not an either or. It's flexible between both. But what I found in many of the implementations that I've done, and many of the applications that I've written, is the service portal development comes later. Get your backend data, get your data model, get your standard forms for managing that data, and then you put a pretty face on it. Not always. I'm not going to use that as an absolute rule. Many times you can get the if it's a bespoke application that the service portal is your front end, is your way of managing that, you can build it right up front and a lot earlier in the process. So don't think of this as we'll do that when we get to documentation. Standard UI, as I show you, it's very familiar to many of us. This is the way fulfillers have been using it. This is the way a lot of end users use it. Show me my tasks. Here's the stories to our project build out. You go into one of them. You've got related lists. You've got UI actions as buttons and links, et cetera, et cetera. Pretty standard stuff there. Service portal. This is our out-of-box service portal. I wish I had a beautiful example to show you, because there are many of them out there. But it gives you a bit different experience, and very responsive, very mobile friendly. And we've got episodes and episodes on Service Portal. Now we get into what I'll call the meat and potatoes, probably where you spend the vast majority of your development experience when you're building an application. Craig, do we have any questions in the chat or anything before I dig into this?
We do, but I was kind of holding them till the end because they weren't entirely related to what we were talking about.
Oh, okay. Then let's continue on, because I'm looking at the clock going, man, time flies when you're talking.
Yeah.
Okay. So obviously the picture on the left, or excuse me, the picture on the right is indicative that we now have Flow Designer as of Kingston. If you want, go back to our December episode on Flow Designer, and you can see that it's a wonderful new way to, it's available through delegated development to do drag and drop flow work. You can trigger these things at the top and say when a record is inserted or updated or a scheduled time comes around, you decide what that trigger is, and then what the actions are to do that. I have a very simple approval shown here that I think I did in a demo a while ago. That we've also got the traditional graphical workflow engine with the workflow editor. Still very powerful, very useful. It's not going anywhere. Flow Designer is not booting it out of kicking it off the island. We've got business rules, both scripted and unscripted. So if you get it complex, you can go into check the advanced box and go into the JavaScript box. Or if it's just a very simple, if this, then that kind of thing. If you see this value, then send this message or set these other values. You can do that with business rules. Those, if you're new to the platform, don't let the terminology confuse you. Business rules are basically database triggers. Okay? If something happens to a record that's inserted, updated, deleted, or read, it's a business rule. It's some of the nomenclature when I first started the platform kind of got me, like the difference between UI action, UI script, UI policy. Like, which is which?
Yeah. Right.
Scheduled jobs, obviously, were things that are run on a time basis. Every night at 2 a.m., I want you to go out and refresh this integration. Yeah, very classic case. Or watch for things that are overdue and send a reminder to the people and say, hey, you're going to bring back that laptop? UI actions, one of the things I just bagged on. These are the buttons and links that are manually triggered. I should
Yes.
put parenthetically in here, manually triggered. Okay. Tasks, your process flow, your business logic may involve sub tasks. It's not just this one request. Think about fulfillment of putting a server. Okay, you may need to provision it, you may need to patch it, you may need to, several subtasks that go on, maybe even by different parties within the whole process flow. If you've crossed swim lanes and this person has to do something, you might want to think about that as a subtask to a request or a subtask to your process and put that on the form. These can also be done through Flow Designer or Workflow or a number of different ways that you can do those. Access controls, we don't want to leave security out here. I know I have it fairly low on the list, but consider security throughout the whole thing and test, test, test. Always test your access controls. And of course, integrations. Do we need to? Do we have to exchange information with other systems? How often? How frequent? Is it real time? Is it batched? All of those questions come into play. We got you covered there as well. Incoming, the APIs are very easy to implement. Every table has its own REST and SOAP APIs available to it. You don't have to do anything in ServiceNow to activate those. They're already available. Outgoing, we're sending REST messages and SOAP messages and LDAP, and you can do email and FTP if you want, if you're really insane. Then we get to the reporting and analytics. What is it we were setting out to do? And let's measure ourselves against that. And we can create beautiful dashboards like the ones you see here with
It's
maps
nice.
and scores. And you've
Mhm.
got stuff like this for Cloud Labs that
I
manages
do.
knowledge. Yeah,
Yeah,
you've got some.
I have some that it shows me, well, like day-to-day stuff,
Yep.
machines that have been running for a long time, so I can chase them down and make sure that they should be running still. I can see labs that are waiting and labs that are running at the moment, that kind of
See
stuff.
your
Yes.
system at a glance and know what needs attention, know what doesn't.
Mhm.
See, I see a big red 31 and that says, this is bad. You're going to fix it? Click
Critical.
through it and see the records that are behind this. If you want to know more about the dashboards, the home pages, the reports, even performance analytics, watch our November, January. Craig did episodes 42, 43, I think 44 and 45 were Kingston and Flow Designer. 46 in January was performance analytics with our guest Dan Kane. So you can find out more. I'm giving some back references to earlier episodes of TechNow. Again, find those on the community. Just search for TechNow episode list and you get more in-depth information. Another one that I threw in here at the last minute was Inform Analytics. This is a feature of performance analytics. And
Mhm.
it's really cool because if you put an analytic on a particular field, you get this little eyeball icon, or I don't know if it's an eyeball or like a speedometer kind of thing. It looks kind of creepy, like an Egyptian thing to me.
I thought it looks like an igloo.
An igloo. Okay, go with the igloo icon. We still haven't named the data pill picker icon, whether it's the martini glass or the cannonball or
Now
whatever it is.
actually, this is something I have not used myself. This is pretty
Very
cool.
powerful because right from in your form, you can click that icon and see this little mini dashboard. How cool and powerful is that? Now you don't have to be flipping between a dashboard and the record and up, down, left, right. Puts a lot of power at your fingertips. I believe this was Geneva or Helsinki when this came out. So
Mhm.
everybody should have it by now. And then,
Yeah.
of course, testing, testing, testing. You don't want to write an application without testing. And a lot of times the testing involves formal testing by third-party people that are not the developers, not the process owners, but a QA kind of group. And you want to give them both the ability to do it automated. Hey, click this link and we're going to test 60, 70, 80% of the functionality with an automated test. Great for upgrades as well. Did our application survive going from Jakarta to Kingston or Kingston to London or London to Madrid or Istanbul to Madrid? If you jumped several releases, you really want to do some testing. But write these test plans as you develop. That's why it was up and down the side on that
Mhm.
first diagram. And you will have that in place when it comes time to upgrade. and the test management application, which is really a glorified documentation of what are we going to test, what were the results, let's do this all again. So don't forget to ask your developers, or excuse me, your testers, what was expected, what did you see for a result, are there screenshots, what were the steps to reproduce it, are there any error messages? Those basic 5 questions, which I probably could have thrown on this slide, uh, would are invaluable, rather than saying, click this button and you should see a number 14 at the top. And they say, nope, it's broke. Like, that doesn't do you any good.
Right.
You can make your test management even better. Now, we did talk about customization and configuration, and there's been a lot of talk on the street about customization's bad, okay? Well, customization is when you go beyond configuration. And I am really mentally delineating this as, do I need to write custom script to get my job done? Okay. Configuration is, can I pick fields on a form? Can I fill in values? Can I set up a series of records to make the system do what I want? Okay. A good classic example of this is a UI policy, which is a client-side process that maybe you check a box and another field appears out of nowhere.
Mhm.
That's a UI policy. I could do that with a UI policy just by setting a condition and saying, when this condition is true, turn on this field. And it'll automatically do the reverse logic. You could do that as a client script, which would require you to do client-side JavaScripting, hopefully using our APIs. Given the two, I'd rather do the codeless version in a UI policy.
Yeah, it's easier to manage.
Yeah, easier to manage, easier to test, easier to write. We realize, though, configuration doesn't always get you the answer you need to go through. So if you are going to customize, and you said, yes, we have some requirements in our process that can't be done with click and drag. First, you need to understand the cost. There's always a catch to this.
Yes.
The costs are, what is it going to take to build it? Is this a 2-hour effort or is it a 200-hour effort? What is it going to take to test it and maintain it? And don't forget, testing includes upgrades. If you do things that are, say, DOM manipulation, your testing is going to get really crazy, and it's going to be even costlier because it may not work in the next release. So how do you protect yourself against that? Well, first you need to understand and accept the risks. The risk of this may not work, or this may cost more money to maintain. Make sure that all the parties, the stakeholders, whatever you want to call them, are involved and accept these risks.
The R word.
The R word. Okay. Yes, I've written 600 lines in the script include. I've got the unit tests all ready to go. So, and my favorite, something that I've pontificated since the beginning, time immemorial of TechNow, use your technical best practices. We have them documented on the developer portal. Make sure that you are implementing these. Rather than DOM manipulation, can you get away with using the G-form methods? If you can, great. That's going to insulate yourself by using our APIs, insulate you against the DOM changing, which it has several times since Dublin.
Yes.
Don't get caught with that. Are you using synchronous or asynchronous glide Ajax? Are you doing before and after business rules? Lots of different ways you can protect yourself by observing these. If you're not familiar with these, scan through them. There is a lot of great information. I referenced one just this morning on the community when I was doing the community live stream. Another reference to the new show. Somebody was doing a set value call in a client script, but they were doing it for a reference field, and the only value they were setting was the sysid. Well, you and I know that humans don't like to read sysids, do they? So what does the server do? It says, oh, you're setting a value on this reference field. I have no idea what the display value is. What should I put in that field that's there for the humans? Because, 3x, 2d, 4425, it doesn't mean anything to most people.
Right.
The word Fred Luddy does. So unbeknownst to him, he does a G form.set value, puts in 2 parameters. The server's got to go, I need the third one. So it runs back to the server and does another server call that he didn't know about. So ideally, this is a classic case that I had a server room that looked like the one on the left. Yeah, I had one time. It worked, but it was not fun to maintain. It was not fun to upgrade. The one on the right with the nice colors, that's how I envision your ServiceNow applications should be built. Can you build ServiceNow applications like the one on the left? Oh, absolutely. I've seen some.
Mm-hmm.
But if you observe technical best practices, if you go through good architecture and you work with your line of business, if you are implementing something for a line of business in your business units that you have, you will get something more like the one on the right, which is easier to debug, easier to upgrade, easier to maintain, easier to develop. Like, hey, we need to add a new network switch. Great. Go get me the green cables. Let's get to work.
Let's get
Okay.
to work.
Not, what do we got in the box, Dave? Okay. So back to our original question as we start to wrap this up in the last few minutes.
Yeah, I got some questions, by the way.
Okay. Well, here's my question. What is the difference between configuring an existing application and starting a new application from scratch, Craig?
Not much.
You are correct. Not much. Really, when we give you the application, sell you, rent you, whatever we're doing for you, incident, problem, software asset management, that kind of thing, we've already built the data model. We've already built a lot of the underpinning logic. We've already built a lot of that, and you are tweaking it. You can extend it. You can write more scripts. You can put more fields on there, but you are using the same basic concepts. We build on the same platform that you build on. And that's a wonderful thing, because if you're already familiar with notifications, business rules, workflows, Flow Designer, dragging fields out onto a designer and giving choices to choice lists, you've done platform development. The only thing you need to add on to that is let's gather up the requirements, let's understand the data model, and let's get to work. That's it.
That's it.
It's not a huge leap of faith to build your own applications if you're already doing this. And if you're not already doing this, it's a huge time saver, because you don't have to set up the servers and the middleware and the OS and procure hardware. You can get to work right now working on, let's fix this problem. Let's identify the problem. Let's build a solution. Okay. Not setting up, spending 6 weeks just to get to the starting line of this race. Let's fire the gun. I'm ready to go, coach. Easier maintenance, because if you're working on it the correct way, you're going to be configuring instead of coding. And if you do have to code, certainly work on code that has data-driven logic behind it. I can let the user or somebody else change values in a table that completely reroute the behavior of my application. That's way better than going back to a developer and saying, I need some revisions made to a workflow. Oh, and your script. Like, no, I try to write things so that they're future-proof as much as possible. And of course, single database so that you can share that information with other people. In the case of that safety issue, if you've been watching the Tech Shorts series, you'll know that at some point, a safety issue isn't a safety issue anymore. It's an IT issue. So I want a button on the form that says, send this to IT. Like, hey, there's a loose network cable underneath my desk and it's starting to fray and the RJ45 is falling. It
sparks. And
okay. It's great. I'll get somebody from IT. Yeah, if it sparks, it's a safety issue.
Right.
But you can move that information. We're not talking about building this complex integration to another system and waiting tomorrow before they even see the ticket. It's like, boom, it happens. They get a notification in Slack. Done. Okay, let's cross that off. So reference information for everything we talked about is available here. I'm not going to read the links to you. We try to keep them short. If you want to see the entire episode list, you can go to bit.ly/ServiceNow-TechNow. That is the one that I made. I keep forgetting I have that.
And so you want to look at these questions real quick?
Yes. Let's go back to the face-to-face. I'm going to turn off the slide sharing and turn my camera back on.
All right.
Stop sharing the screen.
Let me see if I can make sense of some of these. I had a few, and then they kind of grew as we went on here. So here we go. One guy asks, some of these are unrelated.
Okay.
Says he has a requirement to create a copy button on a standard change proposal, but I cannot copy template fields. Can anyone guide me how to achieve this? I would say go to the community. Can you?
That actually sounds like a community question, and I could answer that very easily. Template fields simply carry the field value pairs in an encoded query. If you've done encoded queries before from the list and copy those in and say, hey, do an add query on my glide record, it's the same thing. You can copy them. It's really just stored as one big string. So the name of the field, if you copied that value from one record to another, that it's exactly the same as copying a reference field.
Okay.
What else you got for this lightning round?
Okay, so I think this is an easy one. Curious, how does no code non-admin capture their changes in an update set? So you just turn it on, make your changes, and then close the update set.
The non-admin would be granted, they'd be entitled to make those changes. Let's say I gave Craig access to my application. I use delegated development to turn that on. Now that implies that we are using Studio, which implies we are using a scoped application.
Right.
Once you're in scoped application, you really don't need an update set. You can use them if you must. I'll leave it at that. But Craig would be using Studio or just right click. No, you have to. I'm sorry. You have to use Form Designer in Studio. I tried this the other day in a demo. You can't just go to the record and say Form Designer. So it's already captured for you. It's not something that the non-admin has to consciously think of.
Right. Is there a way I can export a workflow to SharePoint? It would be helpful for my work with business users. I think, well, yeah, I mean, you can put it into an update set and export it. And
The workflows we build on ServiceNow are not going to be exported to SharePoint and just magically be picked up and run.
No,
they're two completely different technologies. So that sounds more like an integration question.
I think he was wanting to export a workflow to SharePoint. And my way I would do that is export, put it in an update set, and save the update set, and share that XML file out.
I think we need to have a little more information.
Yeah, I think we need some more information. But yeah,
Yep. Good question.
Yeah, let's see. Karina Vanessa Torres Martinez.
You killed my father. Prepare. Sorry.
When using the form widget in the service portal, is there a way to customize where would the form redirect after updating or creating an item? We did this. You did this not too long ago in one of our videos, right? I think you were doing the redirects after.
I think Dave was. It might have been Dave.
Dave. I'm sorry. Maybe it was Dave.
There are these wonderful questions when I'm doing the community live stream every morning. These are great.
Yeah.
These are great. All right. We are out of time. I apologize. If there are additional ones, please put them in the comment section of the discussion on the community, and we will get notified and answer them there. Thank you very much, Craig, for riding along with me today. I thought this was going to be a rather short topic, and it took us the full hour.
Oh, no. I've been around you long enough to know if I get you started.
Especially on something I just dearly love, and I do dearly love writing applications on ServiceNow, in case you couldn't tell. That is where my passion is.
Absolutely.
It's like everything I see these days seems to be solvable, including turning on this studio. It's done through ServiceNow. It's crazy. I push a button, the studio comes on, the lights go on. It's a wonderful thing. So yes, I might be shoehorning a few of these solutions in. But until next time, we will talk to you again April 26th, talking about the REST API Explorer, and then we will have not one, not two, but three live sessions at CreatorCon in the Developer Theater. Craig, Dave,
I'm one of them.
Will be building an awesome application that we're still scripting out. We're going to work on that for you.
We'll get it done.
Here are last year. This is going to be another level above that. A lot of fun. So thank you very much once again. And we will talk to you next week. Go out and learn something and share it with somebody else.
Go build an application.
That's right. And let us know what you're building. We want to know. Bye.
All right.
Later. Music.